Hello, my name is Donna. Welcome to my channel. My channel is about transcending trauma. Um, so, I don't know, I guess I should at the beginning of each just give a little background quick, but so this is my journey. I've lived through some shit, been diagnosed with CPTSD and PTSD, and not to label things. It's kind of hard not to. We don't want to get stuck on our labels, and I like to say I am mother, I am sister, I am daughter. I am not CPTSD. It is part of a slew of behavior that comes on after living through trauma. And, it can be overcame. It takes work, so that's what I'm talking about. And that's my journey. Um, it's funny. I was thinking, I didn't realize I was in pain. I was so happy, and everyone would say I was always the uplifter, and always very joyous. But, not really looking at the patterns and that. But it still affects, it affected by my life choices, by who I picked as friends and partners and, how I lived my life. And so, I could stay living in denial and say, hey, I'm just fine. There's nothing wrong. I'm fine, and I can move on. And, I did. I came to a crossroad where it was like, I can live in this, not looking at it because people say, oh, that feeds it. Of course, we don't want to cause anxiety and overthink, but to heal and overcome, So I could ignore it and live in denial and think, without my awareness that, hey, everything's fine. I can just deny it and continue living, struggling in relationship and with attachment issues and, just not living my life to its fullest and, having secure, healthy relationships and feeling good about self without feeling guilt, um, so, or, I could get into therapy and do my own healing work too, taking definitely a soul journey and, done a lot of introspection, and a lot of being the observer, the witness of self, just really paying attention to the patterns. And so this is my journey and I want to share it. I don't claim to have the answers. I want to validate others and let you see that you're not the only one. I've connected with so many people, and I know a lot of people struggle with the same feelings, And I just want to share, like, what's helped me and where I'm at, and I'm learning every day, So yesterday, I had a really great therapy. I love my therapist so much. She's so awesome. And we were talking a bit about, and I had made a post a while ago about, going into the, I always mix them up if it's called sympathetic or parasympathetic. I believe it's the sympathetic that is the fight or flight, freeze or fawn, and then the parasympathetic is the relaxed state nervous system. So when something traumatic happens, we get put into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's natural. It's a good thing. It's what the mind and body do to protect self, You fight, you run, you freeze, to keep still, to, hopefully keep the abuser away or not draw attention to self. Fawn, like, please don't hurt me. Like, fright, freeze, or fight, like, get away. So these are all trauma responses. And so at a moment of abuse, they have a great place. They do. The thing is, when we live through abuse and trauma, we can tend to fall into the pattern of that nervous system quite often. And I hate when people call it hypervigilance. I listen to a lot of YouTube, and a lot of times they talk about the hypervigilance. And to me, a lot of times they'll make it sound like someone, and maybe some people do. I don't think I do this. I've done a lot of reflection. So, and I talked with my therapist. She's like, no, you're not hypervigilant. And so I noticed with my daughters, obviously they lived through a lot of the same abuse as me, so they also have some of the same symptoms. So I want to talk about an incident that happened and sort of the learning and the lesson out of it. So, and I did see in her what I see about the hypervigilance. It's not where we just get upset about something that doesn't exist. It's the exaggeration. It's the height of it. So something can happen and we can add that heightened meaning. And this is not done with our conscious mind, with our awareness. These are subconscious patterns. So I guess I'll tell the story and then pull the lesson, the learning, the healing, the analogy from it. So, so much learning. So me and my daughter were in a major car accident, like very, very bad, totaled car. It was obviously traumatizing. And then also my ex-husband, who was living from his own trauma response, which is called anger. That's that fight part. So he would often, when we were driving in the car, threaten to kill us, drive off the road, lots of scary things. I, honesty, vulnerability, have lived through a pattern that I learned and through anxiety where times when I was triggered in the car, I would, like my uncle did and my mother did, these patterns of behavior we learn, slam on the brakes and swerve off the road, and, not to kill us, but to pull over, but angrily and scary-like. And it's okay, parents, forgive self. It is hard when we're triggered in a car, and, we have to bring in our awareness, and it's very much connected to the somatic, to the body responses. When we're triggered, this is not reasoning mind. This is primal mind, and it's very much cortisol rushing the body. And it's that fight or flight, freeze or fawn. But you have to start to recognize when you get put into this state, and you feel it. It's a panic. It's what you would think of. It's like an animal being chased by a tiger. The height is it's huge. So it's okay to pull over, but take a deep breath and pull over quietly and calmly and slowly. Okay? Got it. So I have not done that in a long time. And I'm being very vulnerable and honest, looking at own patterns of behavior. So try not to judge me. I've done plenty of that of myself. Thank you. It's plenty. So the other day, I was driving with my daughters in the car, and I was on a very no traffic side street, pulling onto another no traffic side street in the neighborhood. Not busy at all. Now, she does not have a license. She's 15. And so, and kind of the shit happens, no one's perfect. We're all fallible. We try. We bring in our awareness, and it's like Toltec wisdom. One of the 4 wise words are always do your best, and your best is different at different moments, So we try our best, and we're human. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, and we're going to learn from them, and we're going to try, and that's what's important. So I went to pull out and to make a left turn, and I looked right. There was no one. I looked left. I started to go into the intersection, and the car zoomed, and I did not see it. I slammed on the brakes. I hadn't even pulled out into the street. Now, she had a triggered response, my daughter. Now, she's been, like I said, she's been in a major car accident. So I have to bring in my awareness, if we can apply my story and sort of change the characters and, just see the underlying story there, to sort of bring in our empathy and our awareness and our forgiveness, I'll get there. It's just so much. But so, anyways, she went into a very heightened reaction. She's got that backstory, she's got that backstory coming to the surface, that residue, the residue of that car accident, the residue of her father threatening to kill us and drive off the road, the residue of her mother being anxious in the car when there's arguing, and being psycho and pulling off the road crazy, like, so, sorry, didn't mean to call you psycho. All right, that's not okay. So anyways, learning how to be gentle around self. So that's part of it too. So she had a very heightened response, and her response was, "We almost died. What is wrong with you? You need to pay more attention." Now, we almost died. The car was nowhere near us. I slammed on the brakes. So you don't almost die from someone slamming on the brakes for a car that's feet ahead of them, So we didn't almost die. We got jolted. So she got triggered. So this is a cortisol response. This is not just she's an asshole and shitty behavior. It's like, so again, what are the cortisol responses? What are that sympathetic nervous system responses? I'm sorry, like, again, I forget if it's parasympathetic or sympathetic. I should have looked it up before. I think parasympathetic is the relaxed state. Sympathetic is the fight or flight, freeze, or fawn. Maybe the opposite. Whatever, you get what I'm talking about. So, anger, that's part of that response system. So I had made a post before too, and like even with my ex-husband, and again, don't twist words, not saying to stay engaged or connected, quite the opposite, to abusive people, but to have empathy and know where the patterns of behavior are coming from. They're coming from that cortisol, from that response system. So, and it's the height of things. It may be something very remedial, like slamming on brakes. To her, it looks like a death, it looks like death, that's the heightened response, so that's a triggered response, and it is. So, like, how do we, okay, so I was going to say about my husband, that's the anger, that's the fight or flight, freeze, or fawn, that's anger, that's the fight part of it. And so she started fighting with me, like telling me, and then I started getting triggered. Now, pat on my back, and I'm allowed to feel pride. This is an amazing thing, because that's one of my things I have to work on with my therapist, because it's, that very lack, it's that very lack of self-love compared to narcissism. And so she says, I'm always so afraid to feel good about anything, because I'm afraid, because I have those extremes. We go into that black and white thinking a lot with, when we've lived through abuse. There's all this beauty in between. She said, Donna, you're like so hard and low on yourself, and you're so afraid to feel pride because you don't want to be like the narcissist in your life, that you don't realize that in between is all sorts of happiness and all sorts of pride that's okay. It's not an extreme pride. It's, like, I'm allowed to feel proud that my responses have changed and that I see healing in myself. So I did not engage in opposition with her, although what I did was, how can we come out of these triggers? Our reasoning mind is offline. It is. So it's bringing in our awareness. It's always that awareness. That's why the being in the present moment is so important. And feeling your feelings, feeling the somatic responses. Like, you will be flooded with cortisol. The body is like, it's made this sort of disconnect. It hasn't finished processing stuff that needs to be processed. Like, I think I didn't finish talking. Like, I could live in denial, or I could process things and go through the healing, so I can change, so I can start making better choices, so I can live a better life, So it's about bringing in the awareness and paying attention to the somatic, And I'm just looking at the time. I want to make sure it's not too long. I wanted to talk about something else too, but obviously that'll be next time. So, so bringing in your awareness and just breathing through that heightened body response, that cortisol response. It's a rush, and it's painful. It's painful, but don't project it, because that's that disconnect, and then you give it that height. And the thing is, the more you just connect to the somatic, which is the body and the feelings, and don't give them that a bunch of narrative. We're going to change those stories, just feel it and breathe through it, And honestly, too, like, so I got triggered because that's like a trigger for me. I lived through many years, a lifetime really of devaluing, from people, being told things like, that I had no right to feel any worse, And so when she started telling me how awful I was and I almost killed her, that, like, I know you can think that's just silly to even feel hurt by that, but that rushes my body with cortisol. That reminds me, of the abuse and of being told I'm wrong and I do everything wrong, and the name calling, that like, other people can be called names and they don't feel the way I feel. I've been called names for a long time when I didn't deserve it. And that really rushes my body with the cortisol and creates a very triggered response. Like, oh my gosh, it's that primal response. I'm being attacked again. I'm being attacked. I need to protect. And, the thing is, like, bringing in the awareness. This isn't my abuser. This is my 15-year-old child that's triggered, by me pressing on the brakes and realizing this is a triggered response. This is not an attack on me. This is a triggered response. Now, do we just let it go? In that moment, for sure. Like, when someone is in that and they have not done healing and don't know how to bring in awareness and just feeling it without the anger and without the projection, you have to let it go, and come back to it later, and that pause button, I'm learning about very much, that pause. So too, even within self, now there's two people triggered in the car, so I just breathed through it, and brought in my awareness. Okay, you're not being attacked. She's in fact triggered as well. She's going through a PTSD response. This is not personal, This is past trauma that's bubbling to the surface that she's feeling, And remember this with most people, and, with people that we don't know their background well. Can we have some empathy and maybe think perhaps some of their behavior is because of past trauma and past issues and past experiences that have not been fully processed or been processed in a healthy manner. That's what I really wanted to talk about, something else, because we often, we give the meaning that our background has trained us to believe, Like, in the past, I might have felt like, oh my God, see, everyone hates me. Look at the way she's talking to me. I have no love from anyone. I'm so alone in this world, Like, that's the kind of thought patterns that come from unprocessed trauma, And then, there's different stories that people tell themselves, and then we go out and we, like, say, see the way she talked to me? See, no one loves me. No one loves me. When it was not about me. No matter how personal it felt, it was about something she experienced before. So again, what can we do? I like looking for solutions. So we can hit that pause button and bring in our awareness and just feel, Remember the thought, the reasoning mind is offline. So just feel. And I know the feelings are going to bring on a height, but just tell yourself, just like, think of one word. I like to use residue, or my therapist was saying, old tapes. This is just old tapes. This is just old tapes. This is just old tapes. Like, I like just using residue. This is just residue. This is just residue I'm feeling, And so I can teach her this as well, Like, it is okay to have a startled response when someone hits the brakes. That's fine. That's normal. That's okay. But it's the height we're giving it. I don't want to see my child have to go through that height, And I don't want to have to get triggered either, Like, I don't want her to have to, like, I was trying to explain to her, and then I had to just let it go because the primal mind, it has no reasoning. The computer just went blank. I think it's still filming. Oh, and I forgot my password. There we go. Sorry for that scary close-up. So there was really no reasoning with, the prefrontal cortex. That's the reasoning part of the mind is offline. By the way, it's not fully developed until the age of 25. So if you feel like sometimes you can't reason with your teenager, this is why. They're learning. They have access to some of it. It's not fully developed. So, we're teaching them. This is when the programming is happening. Tune in for further programming. It's when the brain is being programmed. So, and I'm trying to reprogram for her, help her look at these patterns of behavior, because I don't want my daughter to have to, every time it's going to happen. People are going to slam on their brakes, and sometimes, the major car accident we were in, we were just stopped waiting to turn. We don't have control of everything around us. It was not my fault when we got hit. It was not her fault. So like, even accidents happen. So in normal, you're going to have these triggered responses. You're going to have the PTSD after traumatic things, but to learn how to process it and bring in our awareness. So that when someone hits the brakes, it doesn't feel like a truck just landed on top of you, like it did for us. It's just someone hit the brakes, So I kind of like even how that sounds. Hit the brakes, pause, hit the brakes, Wow. See, so metaphorical, goes together. All right, just that. Bring in your awareness. Feel the body sensations. Just breathe through them. They're just residue, And sometimes they are a major accident. And even still, breathe through that. You will be okay. What can you do in these moments? What power do you have? There are some. Call 911. Go to the hospital. Take care of self. There's answers. There is. You're okay. All right. That's it. The life of me honors the life of you. Peace out. Trying to avoid another scary close-up.